we've deployed thousands of these kinds of collaborative robots so far. We've never had a single customer lay anybody off, ever. That may not stay that way, but we have people in factories where, I mean, they really are struggling to try to find enough people to fill jobs. There's a factory that a customer of ours in Texas that was growing from 1,200 to 1,800. They couldn't find enough people, so they really wanted to, supplement with robots. In fact, that same plant manager said to me, he's like, Jim, we all talk about finding skilled labor. I just want labor, like labor. And so, Deloitte has estimated there's going to be 2 million people that are unfilled jobs. You had mentioned earlier today the average age of a person in manufacturing is 58. If either you're a millennial or you have millennial children, they don't want these jobs. I mean, they really don't. All of our Chinese customers, I mean, the turnover there is staggering. I mean, 20, 25, 30% per month turnover inside of direct labor inside their factories. And so they're seeing how much churn there is and the cost associated with all of that churn, and so they're desperately looking for ways to, to leverage technology. I think the other piece, though, and we heard some stats from Jeremiah. There was another Oxford study from a couple of years ago that it basically looked at all of the roles that are in the United States, and what it concluded, which would be kind of a blending weighting of what Jeremiah talked about yesterday, 47% of all roles in the US are subject to some form of automation over the next decade. Now that's both cognitive automation as well as physical automation, but we're going to see a bunch of roles disappear. And if you go into the appendix of that study, what they'll show you, in rank order, is which jobs are going away. So, if you want to go find out, you can say, I'm one of those, so I've got a 0.93 chance that my job's going to disappear over the next 10 years. What frightens people, though, I think, is they can look at that list, and I can tell you, like, the jobs that are going to disappear. I mean, with a pretty good certainty. We don't have nearly as many bank tellers as we used to do. And we don't have nearly as many as librarians as we used to. I mean, those are roles that just don't exist in those kinds of numbers anymore. But what I can't tell you, and what that study can't tell you, is what are the jobs that are going to get created as a result of having this kind of capability? No one would have envisioned, let's go 25 years ago, that there's going to be a job called a social media manager, right? I mean, that just didn't exist. So there are jobs that are going to, as examples, so some of the things that we have people in the factories doing are, they've become supervisors of robots and people. So they're combination of roles where they're interacting with groups of robots. The other piece that, as a manufacturing guy by trade and kind of history, is, I really subscribe to the view of continuous learning, continuous improvement, the ability to enable people who are more aware of the process than anybody else to say, hey, look, if I make this change, I might be able to make it better. Let me try it. Oh, it didn't work. Let me try it. Oh, it did work. OK, so I'll go make the change. The worst thing that we've done to them over the last 30 years has been to put a big piece of static automation in the way, because the way that got done was I hired a consultant to come in and set it up, and the consultant left, and we're not allowed to touch it. Well, if I can just go grab this robot's arm and change what it's doing because that's how you tell it what to do, then now all of a sudden, instead of disabling this continuous learning, you are enabling this continuous learning. And so part of what people are doing are changing, part of what the roles are that people are engaged in is changing the processes and making them better. So in some ways, we've enabled, in fact, the folks at GE talk about it in the context of, I basically have an assistant. I have an assistant that's helping me make my processes better. And I think that's really where the power is going to come from. It's not, it's easy to do the math. Well, let me give you an example of the math. Just so this firm down in Texas, the robot, it's this guy. And what he's doing, what the people were doing was, so there's a bunch of testers around a person. They're putting printed circuit boards into ICT testers. So they put a board in, and then they close it, and push the button, and then they put another board in, and close it, push the button, and then this one's done. They either put it in a good pile, a bad pile, a rework pile. That's what that person does. And in between, while they're waiting, they're waiting. The way they've staffed that is they have one person work for 10 hours their first shift, and then another 10 hours. And those two people work 4 days in a row. That's where their 40 hours comes from. So they're operating this equipment 20 of the 24 hours a day. And then at the end of those 4 days, they put in 2 more people that are operating for another 4 days, 10, 10, 10, 10. So you've got this operation being run 20 of the 24 hours of a day, 4 people running this one station that are $45,000 loaded apiece. This guy's 25K. So I mean, in terms of the math, I mean, obviously the math is there, but I still think, the big idea is what is the learning that we're going to enable. It's the ability to leverage artificial intelligence in some fundamentally and profoundly different ways.